Water dripped at a steady rhythm, drip, drop, echoing through the dead silence. Piercing blue eyes snapped open, pupils shrinking like he just woke up from a living nightmare. His gaze locked onto the IV drip, leaking ice-cold fluid right above him. Hibari bolted upright, gasping for air, his head wrapped in stark white bandages. He scanned the unfamiliar room in a daze. The stark white ceiling and blinding fluorescent lights seared his vision for a split second. An IV bag dangled right next to the hospital bed. The young guy sat there in a panic, racking his brain to remember who he was and why he ended up here. Outside the window, a few sparrows chilled on the power lines, chirping under the sunlight. Hibari shot up from the bed, his bewildered eyes staring outside. Everything unfolding before him felt bizarre. He stared out the window, struck by an overwhelming sight. Towering skyscrapers stood shoulder to shoulder, piercing the deep blue, windswept sky. Where am I? Confusion etched into every line of his face. Hibari glanced down at his hands, sensing something deeply wrong. These pale, scrawny hands didn't belong to a hardened warrior. He touched the wound on his head, his mind overflowing with unanswered questions. Out of nowhere, he spotted an object resting on the nightstand. Hibari grabbed the picture frame, glaring into the glass. The mirror reflected an unfamiliar teenager, but those piercing blue eyes were unmistakable. Before he could finish, a noise from the hallway made him flinch. Hurried footsteps echoed, closing in on his hospital room. The door swung wide open, a nurse stepping inside with a stack of files. But the room sat empty, only a messy pile of sheets remained on the bed. The nurse called out his name in a panic, but silence answered. He had vanished. Right above her head, Hibari clung to the ceiling, gripping a pencil like a lethal weapon. His eyes turned icy, radiating a killing intent that froze the surrounding air. A jolt of electricity surged through his brain, dragging fragmented, violent memories along with it. The pencil tip hovered mere millimeters from the nurse's neck, but his killer instinct faltered. From his high vantage point, he tracked the strange woman's every move with peak paranoia. A commanding voice echoed from the depths of his subconscious. The modern world faded, making way for the twisted visuals of his past. Rewind 500 years, deep within the mist-shrouded mountains of ancient Kyoto. A silhouette tore through the foliage like a hurricane, moving at a terrifying speed. It was Gaku. Gaku gritted his teeth, enduring agonizing pain as he pushed his power past its limits. He clenched his jaw so hard his teeth threatened to shatter under the immense pressure. His legs pumped so fast his muscle fibers began tearing apart. Strands of muscle snapped, echoing with haunting, cracking sounds beneath his flesh. "My lord, you must survive," he roared in his mind, his eyes burning with resolve. Gaku ignored his own mangled body, fueled by a single driving purpose. Then a chill ran down his spine, forcing him to a dead stop. In the distance, thick black smoke and raging flames devoured a massive chunk of the sky. The sacred Hanojai temple drowned in a roaring sea of fire under the pitch-black night. "Hanojai is burning." Gaku stood paralyzed, his heart clenching at the carnage. A storm of arrows rained down, their piercing shrieks tearing through the burning sky. Slaughtered soldiers littered the ground, corpses piling up under the relentless barrage. Gaku weaved through the dead bodies, ignoring the desperate screams of those fleeing for their lives. Facing the blazing temple, he screamed, "My lord!" Realizing his master's life hung by a thread, his rationality evaporated. Gaku triggered the forbidden berserk ninjutsu, a blazing blue aura erupting around his body. This technique forced his overloaded, shredded muscles to instantly reattach. Strands of tissue knotted and fused, generating an explosive power far beyond human limits. He stomped the ground, fracturing the earth, and launched himself forward like a lightning bolt. However, a shadowy figure blocked his path right in the middle of the inferno. "I cannot let you pass," a deep, menacing voice growled from the smoke and flames. The figure instantly recognized Gaku, Nobunaga's strongest ninja, charging in like a madman. Gaku's eyes flared, his sky-high killing intent locking straight onto the obstacle. It was Ryuga, the samurai dubbed the 999-man Slayer, a living legend on the battlefield. Gaku lunged like a phantom, lacking a single ounce of hesitation or fear. His eyes emitted a cold blue electricity, reading the enemy's every microscopic twitch. Ryuga sneered. He rarely saw a ninja with the guts to attack head-on. He lowered his center of gravity, shifting into the EI stance, the ultimate lightning-fast draw technique. A blade slashed out at the speed of sound, ripping the air apart to form a crescent arc of light. Yet Gaku plunged straight into the kill zone, refusing to dodge. The razor-sharp edge grazed his face by a hair, leaving a long trail of light in its wake. Instead of getting sliced in half, Gaku's hand whipped out and caught the blade. He crushed the steel into jagged fragments with his bare hands right in front of his opponent. Gaku's monstrous strength left Ryuga frozen in pure shock. "Your speed of sound is as sluggish as a damn turtle," Gaku roared. Ryuga couldn't believe his eyes. His invincible EI technique had been shattered that easily. Glowing tattoos flared to life across Gaku's face, radiating raw authority. He morphed into a supernatural entity, channeling the forces of nature through every cell in his body. Too fast, Gaku planted his foot right into Ryuga's face, leaving the samurai with a dropped jaw and zero defense. Gaku vaulted into the air, diving back into the sea of fire to save his lord. Meanwhile, the pathetic samurai's face caved in under his brutal force. With his tattoos blazing, Gaku bolted forward, refusing to waste even a second looking back at the loser. Before Ryuga's corpse even hit the dirt, Gaku vanished deep into Hanojai Temple. He landed heavy in the heart of the inferno, thick smoke blinding his vision. Gaku finally breached the collapsing main hall of the temple. The scene before him left him paralyzed in sheer horror. His Lord Nobunaga knelt there, his body impaled by countless razor-sharp blades. Gaku stared in disbelief at his mentor, his master hovering on the brink of death. A lethal blade plunged downward at terrifying speed. Slash, the masked stranger ruthlessly drove the sword through Lord Nobunaga, stealing his final breaths. Gaku shrieked in agonizing pain. Lord Nobunaga. Looming over the dying warlord stood a massive, mysterious figure radiating bloodlust. It was a one-eyed masked ninja, his body covered in bizarre tattoos and cloaked in pitch-black malice. "You bastard, who the hell are you?" Gaku roared, his eyes ablaze with killing intent glaring at the enemy. He charged like a hurricane, unleashing a devastating strike at the masked ninja. The mysterious ninja maintained a terrifying calmness behind his Cyclops mask. Gaku gritted his teeth, pouring every ounce of his life force into strikes that ripped the air apart. The masked ninja effortlessly swatted away Gaku's storm of attacks with his bare hands. Every single punch Gaku threw packed apocalyptic power, leaving sharp trails of light. A fiery collision erupted, the shockwave violently shaking the surrounding space. Those blows packed enough force to slice through iron like tofu, yet the ninja remained unscathed. Gaku unleashed a brutal horizontal slash, tearing through the burning ruins of the hall. His fists carried ferocious momentum, howling through the air with pure rage. They could shatter boulders as easily as crushing a soft dumpling. Yet things were nowhere near as simple as Gaku assumed. The one-eyed ninja halted his thunderous assault with just a single palm. Gaku reeled in shock, feeling a dark surge of power shoving him backward. "Show me your face," Gaku barked, straining to snatch the mysterious mask. The masked ninja gracefully backflipped, dodging Gaku's grasp with flawless precision. He vanished right out of Gaku's line of sight, leaving him stunned and grabbing at empty air. He leaped onto the overhead beam, shrouded in a grim, dark purple aura. The ninja held a scroll in his hand. He was preparing to make his next move. A wave of dread washed over him. Gaku sensed an unnatural energy radiating from above. He unrolled the secret scroll covered in bizarre, ancient runes right in front of Gaku. A scroll, Gaku questioned, his eyes glued to his opponent's every twitch. The ninja began weaving hand signs at breakneck speed, muttering cryptic incantations. The killing intent thickened, and the sky above the temple seemed to violently warp from the dark magic. He concentrated all his energy, harmony, and speed into his rhythmically moving hands. A crimson light flared from the Cyclops mask, signaling an apocalyptic strike about to drop. Front, a deep, resonant voice echoed as he completed his final seal. A gargantuan white lightning bolt crashed from the heavens straight into the chanting ninja, its blinding light tearing the night apart and incinerating everything. Meanwhile, Gaku shielded his eyes from the flames, tracking the ninja's next move. Zap, amidst the howling electricity and thick smoke, Gaku braced himself to avoid getting swallowed by the blast. He escaped. Gaku gasped, realizing the ninja's presence had been erased. "Stop right there! Get your ass out here!" Gaku's roar echoed through the collapsing, burning temple. "Where the hell did you go?" He screamed in despair, but only the crackling flames answered back. Fresh blood stained the floorboards, painting a gruesome scene before the young ninja warrior. Without warning, Lord Nobunaga's hand twitched. He wanted to pass on his final words to Gaku before closing his eyes. Gaku stood shell-shocked as his lord's trembling hand reached out for him. "Lord Nobunaga," he rushed to the dying warlord's side in a pool of blood. Nobunaga suspected the attacker was a new master capable of nullifying all of Gaku's strikes. Gaku's eyes filled with sorrow as he watched his lord deliver his final will. The warlord warned him of the ninja's strange tattoos and sorcery, things he had never witnessed before. Gaku clenched his teeth, swallowing his rage and agony as he watched his master fade away. He slammed his fist into the burning wooden floor, a loud crack echoing through the morning silence. "I won't make it," Nobunaga wheezed, his words stabbing straight through Gaku's heart. A trail of dark red blood trickled down the warlord's face as he gazed at the teenager with forgiving eyes on the brink of death. "What a bitter regret," Nobunaga mumbled, the disappointment clear on his battle-scarred face. In his dying breaths, he dreamt of a world free from meaningless conflict, a peaceful kingdom where his people could thrive. Peace, Nobunaga's final wish echoed in Gaku's mind, igniting a new fire in his tear-filled eyes. A deep voice resonated in the darkness, thanking the loyal ninja for his unwavering service all this time. Looking down at the ancient city of Kyoto from the balcony, Oda Nobunaga stood with his back turned, confessing he wanted Gaku to see this view. The warlord flashed a relieved smile, recalling his life's ultimate dream, a world at peace. But reality was soaked in blood and fire. Inside the blazing Hanojai temple, Oda Nobunaga collapsed, riddled with wounds, while Gaku knelt beside him in sheer horror. Nobunaga's hazy silhouette appeared in the flames, leaving behind a sigh of profound regret. The lord's regret lingered endlessly, and then he drew his final breath. The warlord's corpse lay motionless in the inferno, his back bristling with cold steel. Gaku screamed his master's name in vain, his face contorted in agony. But Nobunaga was truly gone, leaving only a dark pool of blood on the wooden floor. Amidst the collapsing pillars, the ninja muttered his master's name one last time. He clasped his hands in prayer, a lone figure amidst the roaring flames. The ninja code was absolute. When the master dies, the servant must end his own life. It was the inescapable fate of someone living in the shadows. His hand gripped the hilt of his blade tightly. The word peace echoed like a whisper in the pitch-black void. The glowing tattoos on Gaku's body flared as he wondered if such a luxury actually existed. Because in a world drowning in warfare, he had never seen even a fragment of tranquility. Everywhere he looked, there was only carnage and fire. He had never felt a single second of peace. Even so, he chose death to prove his loyalty to his lord. Only Lord Nobunaga possessed the vision to see that future. Staring at the burning Buddha statue, Gaku decided to put his faith in that dream too. A deep blue aura flared around him, carrying a prayer to be reborn in a peaceful world. He swung his blade without hesitation, blood spraying the air. The legendary ninja's life came to an end. Fast forward 500 years, inside a modern, tranquil school. The doctor in the clinic asked the male student sitting across from him to repeat his name and age one more time. The student replied softly, his name was Hibari. With vibrant blue eyes staring straight ahead, he stated he was Hibari, 17 years old, a normal high schooler. Cut to a modern hospital. Someone was asking to verify his information again. Inside the examination room, the doctor sat across from his patient. He told the young man to introduce himself again. Looking him dead in the eye, the teenager clearly stated his name was Hibari, 17, and currently a high school student. The doctor nodded in satisfaction, confirming his consciousness was fully intact. He cleared Hibari for discharge and praised his miraculous recovery. Hibari remained silent, his gaze drifting away as if calculating his next move. Stepping into the hospital lobby, a nurse pushed another patient past him, making sure to congratulate him on his discharge. She warned him not to push too hard since today was the first day of school. Watching the nurse's back, Hibari froze. He recalled what happened back then. Right after he woke up, his assassin instincts kicked in, and he had leaped onto the ceiling, ready to strike when she walked into his blind spot. Hibari broke out in a cold sweat, thanking his lucky stars he hadn't actually murdered the nurse. He strolled down the street, eyeing the power poles and packed skyscrapers. Seriously, anything could happen in this crazy world. Turns out the soul of the Grand Ninja Gaku had hijacked the body of a kid named Hibari, who just woke up from a long coma. An image of Lord Oda Nobunaga and his dream of a peaceful world flashed in his mind. Is this the world he always dreamt of? Horrifying memories rushed back. The Gaku of the past kneeling down, committing seppuku after failing to protect his master. He vividly remembered the excruciating agony of slicing his own stomach open. Yet here he was, 500 years later, walking around breathing under the name Hibari. Even he couldn't figure out why he was still alive. But whatever, overthinking it was pointless. Hibari cracked a faint smile, soaking in the sunlight of this new era. Not far away, a little girl happily ran over to pet her dog while her mother laughed. Hibari stood frozen, watching them, a scene far too peaceful compared to the Warring States era he knew. His eyes softened as he took in his surroundings. So this is what peace looks like, he thought to himself. The world Lord Nobunaga yearned for was finally right in front of him. He figured trying out a normal life in this era might not be so bad. However, something was distracting him. Hibari found this uniform way too restrictive, barely letting him move freely. While he was fussing with his clothes, someone called out. He shot a glance toward the sound. Well, isn't it Hibari? The gang of delinquents swaggered over, their faces pale like they just saw a ghost. The fat boss, Kumazawa, chuckled smugly, shocked this punk was still breathing. Hibari locked eyes with the man standing in front of him. He started analyzing. This guy had zero killing intent, and his stance was wide open. Seeing the guy approach with a massive grin on his face, Hibari assumed this dude was definitely his friend. A lackey standing nearby smacked Hibari on the shoulder, barking at him for not greeting boss Kumazawa yet. Hibari repeated the name Kumazawa in his head to memorize it. Kumazawa kept that smug, mocking grin plastered on his face. Thinking they were buddies, Hibari flashed a bright smile back, politely greeting Sir Kumazawa. The lackey stood dumbfounded, wondering why this kid was acting so obedient today. Kumazawa busted out laughing, boasting that the kid finally learned his place after bashing his head. He looked ridiculously proud of himself. He leaned in close, mocking that the fall from the roof must have rewired his entire personality. Hibari looked clueless, having no idea what this guy was rambling about falling off a building. Out of nowhere, Kumazawa threw Hibari in a headlock, dragging him along and declaring they could go back to enjoying their fun school life together. Hibari let himself get dragged, remaining unfazed, eyeing the fat guy with pure curiosity. What caught his attention most was the phrase, fun school life, the guy just dropped. Hibari figured school must be an incredibly entertaining place. He thought back to the Warring States, where joy was a luxury buried under ruins and corpses. Hibari cracked a grin. He was eager to see what this fun was all about. Hibari still thought this guy was a solid bro, so he enthusiastically told him, "I'm in your care from now on." The fat boss hauled Hibari away, inviting him to hang out at their usual spot. The goons trailed behind with cocky smirks. Hibari thought to himself, so this is what it feels like to link arms with friends for the first time. He found the experience pretty refreshing. Hibari checked out the school, still marveling internally at the peace of this era. The group stopped at an isolated corner of the schoolyard. Here, Kumazawa exposed his true colors as a violent thug. He casually sat on an orange-haired student's back like a human chair, then stuck his foot out and ordered, "Lick it." Hibari stood frozen, watching the scene with an emotionless face, seemingly trying to process what was happening. Kumazawa sneered, forcing Hibari to lick his shoes until they were spotless and shiny. The lackeys chimed in with mocking laughter. They taunted that the kid used to be great at this job, so why the hesitation now? Hibari watched in silence, a shift occurring in his eyes. He cast a side glance at the miserable student crawling on the dirt. Kumazawa glared down at him, his face dripping with pure disgust. The orange-haired student trembled, sweating buckets out of pure terror. Kumazawa crushed his cigarette out on the victim's head, bragging about his brand-new chair, since the last guy couldn't handle it and jumped off the roof. He whipped out his phone and told Hibari to take a good look at what was on it. The screen played a video of Kumazawa dragging a girl by her hair while she sobbed and begged for mercy. He laughed like a maniac, explaining that this kid's older sister had the guts to complain to the school, so he taught her a lesson she'd never forget. Hibari stared dead at the tiny screen, his ears assaulted by the fat guy's garbage words. Kumazawa shamelessly bragged that he planned to strip the girl down and have some fun just to spite them. The orange-haired student on the ground couldn't hold back his agonizing sobs for his sister. The boy screamed, begging Kumazawa to spare her, but only received the boss's extreme aggression in return. He barked at the kid, warning him not to ruin his good mood. Kumazawa dropped a filthy threat about what he would do to the girl next time. The poor victim could only sob and apologize helplessly at the abuser's feet. Hibari's eyes hardened. Kumazawa kept growling, "A chair doesn't get to speak." Without missing a beat, Hibari stepped up and placed a hand on Kumazawa's shoulder. A light tap, but it grabbed everyone's attention. The whole crew started sensing something off about Hibari. The lackeys and Kumazawa all looked bewildered. An illustration popped up, explaining that the act of licking shoes was a symbol of submission in Shakespearean plays, which Hibari knew nothing about. Hibari thought to himself that he didn't understand what a smartphone or those images were, but he knew for a fact this fat guy didn't fit the word peace. Hibari stated coldly, "There is nothing more pathetic in this world than the weak bullying the even weaker." The orange-haired student looked up in awe at the guy, defending him right in the middle of enemy territory. Kumazawa froze, veins popping on his forehead. He growled, asking what the hell Hibari just said. Hibari had no intention of starting a war. He was just stating his actual thoughts without hiding a damn thing. Hibari casually mentioned that his memory was a bit fuzzy since he just got out of the hospital. He lifted his foot, staring dead into Kumazawa's eyes with a cold command. "So why don't you demonstrate how to lick shoes for me first?" Kumazawa's rage hit the ceiling, the blood vessels on his forehead looking ready to burst. A terrifying anger swallowed the area. This was the undeniable signal for an unavoidable clash. The fat guy cracked a sinister smirk, exposing his savage face. He burst into maniacal laughter, mocking that Hibari must have left his brain behind in the hospital. Kumazawa cracked his knuckles, threatening to help engrave those painful memories back into his body. Hibari just stood there, his calm eyes tracking every movement of the furious giant. Kumazawa hurled a massive punch straight at Hibari, roaring viciously, "I'll teach you a lesson you'll never forget." The lackeys snickered from the sidelines, calling Hibari a massive idiot for daring to challenge their boss. Hibari remained motionless as the fist barreled toward him. He seemed slightly distracted, lost in the peaceful feeling he was experiencing for the first time. Close up on Kumazawa's furious face, he never expected a weakling like Hibari to be reckless enough to just stand there. Hibari looked mildly surprised when the fist nearly brushed his face. His judgment was lagging since it had been way too long since he faced an enemy. But right after, his instincts kicked in faster than his brain. Hibari executed the natural reflex of a seasoned warrior. Hibari's fist buried itself straight into Kumazawa's face. It was an unstoppable reflex, like blinking when dust hits your eye or sneezing from a virus. The lackeys stood paralyzed, their jaws hitting the floor at the absurdly fast turn of events. The orange-haired student stared in stunned silence. He figured that was the kind of power a ninja earned after surviving years of hellish training. A critical hit that sent blood exploding from Kumazawa's face. He had zero time to react to Hibari's blindingly fast and brutal strike. Hibari stared down at his own hand, sweat pouring down his face. He cursed internally for going way too hard on a civilian. Kumazawa's face caved in completely under the suffocating pressure of the punch, blood gushing from his nose like a fountain. The fat guy was blasted backward like a weightless sandbag. This was simply a conditioned reflex of a master assassin. Kumazawa went airborne before slamming hard into the dirt, lying motionless as everyone present stared in sheer horror. Hibari turned pale, panicking. I am so screwed. He just remembered this wasn't the brutal battlefield of the past. A civilian? Did I just murder someone? Hibari spiraled into a panic, convinced he just caught a body in peacetime. An instant later, a pained groan echoed from the wreckage ahead. Hibari flinched. Undisguised relief washed over Hibari's eyes. He's still breathing, he thought to himself. Kumazawa's agonizing groans kept coming, proving the fat guy was still clinging to life. Hibari's hand was coated in enemy blood. The sound of cracking joints echoed loudly. Hibari realized that even though his current body belonged to a high schooler, a ninja's technique was way too much for a modern human to handle. Kumazawa coughed up blood non-stop. The lackeys freaked out seeing their boss's face horribly disfigured from the punch. The grunts scrambled to help Kumazawa up. One panicked, yelling to get him to a hospital ASAP. Despite the agony, Kumazawa still managed to scream a threat, vowing revenge at all costs. Hibari just stood in silence, watching their backs fade away. Hibari let out a sigh of relief that nobody died. He grew even more convinced that ninjas were entirely obsolete in this era. Hibari walked over to the orange-haired student sitting dazed on the ground, asking gently, "Hey, are you okay?" Hibari placed his hand on the kneeling boy's shoulder. Boom, thick white smoke erupted violently from the orange-haired boy, startling Hibari into stepping back on high alert. Hibari's eyes widened in shock at the bizarre phenomenon. The dense smoke rapidly swallowed the trembling orange-haired boy. Hibari covered his nose, wondering if this was the shadow clone technique. He narrowed his eyes, catching the sound of clicking coming from within the fog. Through the smoke, a young guy emerged with a cigarette dangling from his lips, looking cocky as hell. He strolled out casually, and Hibari instantly recognized this guy's footwork was no joke. Hibari immediately cranked up his guard, sensing the heavy killing intent pouring off his opponent. The orange-haired guy with weird tattoos on his neck bluntly asked if Hibari was a ninja. Spotting the glowing seal on his neck, Hibari was internally shocked. That was a ninja tattoo. The guy took a drag of his cigarette, oozing absolute confidence in his status. He introduced himself as Enzo Hattori, a ninja from the Shinoran Syndicate. The moment he finished speaking, Enzo, decked out in modern ninja gear, started gliding silently through the smoke. He wove hand signs, activating the mini drones hovering around him. A razor-sharp kunai was drawn at blinding speed. Enzo lunged forward, intending to claim Hibari's life right then and there. Hibari looked clueless, still not grasping what this ninja was rambling about. Enzo geared up to strike, while Hibari stood still, observing his opponent and wondering who the hell this ninja was. He vaulted forward, moving so fast he left only motion blurs behind. Hibari glued his eyes to the attacker's every twitch. Enzo launched himself into the air, syncing up with his modern tech gear. The electronic shisha drone spun wildly, spewing out massive clouds of smoke. Hibari stared at this weird, high-tech weapon. Enzo locked his hand signs, unleashing a move called Chimney Burst. Smoke billowed from his hands, rapidly swallowing the ground. Chain reaction smoke explosions detonated, completely blinding everyone in the area. Enzo shouted, triggering his secret art, Smoke Prison, to lock his opponent down. The white smoke coiled around Hibari like thick ropes. Smoke flooded the zone, forming a loose but insanely irritating cage. Hibari strained to see through the thin layers of smoke enveloping him. Out of nowhere, a kunai ripped through the smoke screen, flying straight at his head. In a split second, Hibari kicked a discarded iron pipe off the ground. He twisted his body to dodge the strike, reaching out to snatch his newly found weapon. Even if it was just a piece of scrap metal, Hibari was locked and loaded for a counterattack. The harsh clash of metal rang out as Hibari parried Enzo's strike dead in its tracks. He told himself to hyperfocus and not show a single opening to this enemy. Hibari gripped the iron pipe hard, sweat rolling down his cheek from the pressure of the fight. Enzo's stealth and offensive capabilities were no joke. The core of a ninja is the art of mimicry, camouflaging to infiltrate and scout. They could morph into anyone, even an average blue-collar worker, to pull off an assassination. Sometimes they acted weak and harmless, other times righteous, just to earn their target's trust. They hid their fangs, wore the mask of a regular civilian, and blended right into everyday life. However, in the most unexpected fraction of a second, the assassin would expose themselves and take down their prey with one lethal slash. Back to reality, Enzo Hattori was fighting to counter Hibari's strike. Beneath that preppy exterior lurked a bone-chilling killing intent. Hibari silently confirmed that the opponent standing before him was a hardened veteran. Mimicry, the art of disguise, was both a basic skill and the ultimate secret art of the ninja world. He wondered in shock if ninjas were still lurking in every corner, even in this peaceful era. Enzo closed the distance, smirking as he asked if Hibari was lost in thought. He blew a cloud of white smoke right in Hibari's face to provoke him. Hibari cursed as the smoke blinded his vision without warning. A brutal jab to his leg forced Hibari to grit his teeth and defend helplessly. He groaned as his opponent backed him into a corner, his reflexes suddenly turning sluggish. Hibari tumbled through the air like a squirrel to dodge Enzo's relentless attacks. He laughed triumphantly, declaring Hibari would never escape this smoke. Enzo confirmed this was the smoke prison, an inescapable cage meant just for him. Hibari yelled at Enzo to back off so he could explain himself. He swore he had no intention of fighting and just wanted to know what the hell was going on. From within the smoke, Enzo reminded him there was a serial killer ninja on the loose in this area. The gray smoke rings spiraled around the schoolyard, perfectly concealing Enzo's presence. He stated Shinoran's mission was to hunt down and eliminate that dangerous criminal. Enzo noted Hibari was also highly skilled at erasing his tracks and presence. The gray fog covered Hibari's eyes, making him even more confused facing this opponent. Enzo called Hibari a rogue assassin operating in the shadows without registering with the syndicate. Hibari denied it loudly, swearing he genuinely knew nothing about what the guy was saying. He said in this life, he only wanted to live a simple, peaceful existence. But Enzo just scoffed, brushing him off and calling Hibari a blatant liar. He insisted no real assassin ever begged for a peaceful life. Meanwhile, hands made of smoke grabbed Hibari's legs. Hibari realized in horror that he was too late. The smoky hands were clamping down hard on his legs. Hibari realized the enemy he was fighting was just a clone made of smoke. Out of nowhere, a barrage of razor-sharp kunai shot out from the smoke. Enzo roared, ordering Hibari to leave his life right here. Surrounded by death, Hibari's eyes instantly turned sharp and unyielding. Hibari closed his eyes, ignoring the kunai flying inches from his neck. He thought to himself, maybe things really had to play out that way. Inside the dense fog, Enzo looked shocked, not understanding what Hibari was planning to do. In that split second, he silently accepted the one truth he had always tried to deny. The fact that in this world, terrifyingly powerful ninjas still existed. Bright blue streaks flared on Hibari's neck, signaling his awakening power. He realized that even though 500 years had passed since the Sengoku period, nothing had really changed. Hibari opened his eyes, his gaze now carrying the crushing dominance of a legend. A massive surge of blue energy exploded around Hibari as the lethal kunai closed in. A thought flashed in Hibari's mind. The Sengoku era never ended. He swung his arm, the fierce energy blasting the kunai away, shattering them into pieces. Enzo Hattori froze in terror, failing to comprehend what was happening right in front of him. Normally, Enzo's smoke let him sense every microscopic movement and his opponent's body heat. This gave him the ultimate advantage in any game of hide and seek inside the thick fog. However, the second Hibari truly unleashed his dormant ninja skills. Enzo started sweating bullets, feeling an overwhelmingly monstrous presence. A multicolored tornado of energy violently erupted, completely swallowing Enzo's smoke. Enzo trembled, stammering incoherently under the invisible, crushing pressure. He screamed in his mind, "This presence, it's too massive, unbelievably massive." He panicked. This was the first time in his life he faced an opponent with such tyrannical dominance. Enzo lost his bearings entirely, unable to pinpoint where Hibari was inside this energy storm. Hibari, the student's name echoed through the hazy mist. Without warning, a razor-sharp kunai was already resting against Enzo's throat before he even noticed. Enzo froze, sweat dripping down his face with death just inches away. Hibari smiled with supreme confidence, his blazing blue eyes locking onto his opponent. I win. Enzo remained speechless, utterly dominated by the high schooler's speed and raw power. Hibari declared, if I were your enemy, you'd already be dead. The truth is, I don't know a damn thing about this era. Enzo asked, his voice shaking, this era? Who the hell are you really? He replied casually, I am the ninja Gaku. Looks like I got reincarnated into this era. Gaku? Enzo gasped in sheer terror hearing that legendary name. Hibari kept the upper hand, the kunai in his grip radiating undeniable authority. Hibari twirled the weapon on his finger like a pro, then tucked it away. His tone shifted abruptly, turning friendly. He explained that's just how things went down. While Enzo was still reeling, Hibari retracted all of his killing intent. Since we're done here, point me to some good food spots around here. Hibari walked off like nothing happened. Enzo stared at Hibari's back, his mind still blown. Gaku, if that's really true. He muttered in awe, this is unbelievable. A bizarre webbed foot touched down softly on the dirt nearby. A cryptic smile crept onto the face of a mysterious creature hiding in the shadows. It was the mysterious toad. It had witnessed the whole thing and seemed to be plotting something. The King Burger sign appeared under the clear blue sky, marking Hibari's first dining experience in the modern world. A poster for a mouth-watering double burger hung on the wall, leaving Hibari wondering what the hell it was. Hibari stared hard at the menu, highly skeptical if this stuff was actually edible. Enzo Hattori quickly educated his tech-blind senior, calling the hamburger the legendary food of this era. While waiting for the food, Enzo tried to act smooth and get the cashier's number but got shot down hard, while Hibari just stood there looking lost. Carrying the tray to the table, Hibari stared at the pile of burgers and fries, internally amazed at seeing such vibrant-colored food for the first time. Enzo Hattori unhinged his jaw and took a massive bite to show his senior how it's done. He chewed aggressively with a look of pure satisfaction. Hibari cautiously brought the burger to his nose for a sniff test. After examining it closely, he took a tiny, hesitant first bite. Hibari froze on the spot, his eyes wide with shock. An explosion of flavor left him speechless. This food was insanely delicious compared to anything he ate in the past. Between bites, Enzo Hattori lectured him about Shinoran, the modern ninja syndicate. He explained ninjas nowadays had to register with the syndicate to clean up street violence. Not just violence, they also controlled illegal drug trafficking rings, and even underground black market gun and weapons deals. Even turf wars between Yakuza syndicates. All the underworld messes the cops couldn't touch were quietly handled by them. To use ninjutsu, a ninja strictly needed a Shinoran license, which was this signature wooden tag. Enzo Hattori explained that since Hibari wasn't on the roster, he assumed he was an illegal ninja at first. Hibari casually munched on his fries, looking totally unfazed and uninterested. Enzo Hattori then bowed repeatedly, apologizing frantically for attacking him earlier, making Hibari feel a bit awkward. Hibari waved it off, saying it was fine. He only got stabbed in the leg anyway, a mere scratch. Hearing him casually call it a mere scratch, Enzo Hattori sweated bullets, thinking this guy was an absolute monster. Looking at Hibari's chill vibe, Enzo Hattori felt he radiated the aura of a true master. In his mind, the name Gaku belonged to the strongest grand ninja in history, a legend everyone feared. Enzo Hattori couldn't fathom that this living legend was sitting right in front of him eating a burger. But in reality, Hibari was stuffing his face like he'd been starved, dropping crumbs everywhere. Enzo Hattori blushed hard, fighting to suppress his inner fanboy hype. He looked away, telling himself not to let Hibari see him geeking out. He thought to himself, if he acted like a desperate fanboy, he'd look lame and wouldn't get to hang with the boss for long. Taking a sip of water, Enzo Hattori confessed that the whole reincarnation thing still sounded like pure fantasy. He asked out of curiosity if Hibari could still use those overpowered ninjutsu techniques. Hibari looked down thoughtfully, his gaze turning unusually deep. The image of the bloodthirsty, one-eyed masked ninja flashed in his memory. He denied it, saying that wasn't his technique, then out of nowhere asked Enzo Hattori to call him by a different name. Hibari stated the name Gaku was in the past, and he didn't want any ties to it anymore. From now on, he wanted everyone to call him Hibari. Enzo Hattori looked stunned. Hibari wanted to start a fresh, peaceful life under a new name, leaving the slaughter behind. The aura shined again, and Enzo Hattori looked at Hibari with starry eyes, like he just met his destined hero. His eyes lit up with admiration for his senior's sheer swagger. Hibari told Enzo Hattori to just talk normally since they were the same age. No need for all the formalities. Hibari smiled gently, surrounded by an illusion of falling cherry blossoms like a true heartthrob in Enzo's eyes. Enzo blushed, his heart pounding, and meekly agreed to his senior's request. Enzo decided to drop the formalities and started explaining the real reason he attacked Hibari. Hibari listened, asking if this had anything to do with those rogue ninjas. Enzo's face turned serious, confirming the existence of scumbags who betrayed the code. He explained that normally, it's forbidden for a ninja to blow their cover or use ninjutsu in front of civilians. But lately, some punks were blatantly breaking the rules, openly attacking innocent people. Hibari's eyes turned icy as he grasped the gravity of the situation. The first shocking incident happened a month ago, on a night with heavy rain. The streets were swarming with cops protecting the Minister of Environment on his city tour. After wrapping up, the minister walked down the rain-soaked sidewalk under heavy guard. The entourage turned into a quieter street to give him some breathing room. Wanting to hide the fact that he hadn't quit smoking despite loudly preaching against it, he slipped into an alley for a drag. That hypocrisy forced the official to find a blind spot to satisfy his craving. Even with SB guards locking down both ends of the alley, disaster still struck. A blood-curdling scream shattered the silence, leaving the guards terrified. The minister clutched his throat, writhing in agony, his body seemingly being ripped apart from the inside. The guards rushed in, panicking, having zero clue what was happening to their boss. Grotesque tumors started bubbling up, pulsating terrifyingly under the victim's face. He clutched his face in absolute agony, his breathing turning into a choked wheeze. The horrific scene played out right in front of his helpless bodyguards. The minister collapsed, his agonizing screams tearing through the cold, rainy night. Finally, his head burst open. Blood splattered all over the dark alley, brutally ending the life of a high-ranking official. Hearing this, Hibari covered his nose, as if he could still smell the heavy stench of blood. Enzo revealed the autopsy found an insanely lethal poison inside the victim. The killer spared no one. Even women and kids died the exact same agonizing way. Enzo crushed his plastic cup, raw fury painted across the teenager's face. Only a ninja had the skills to slip past the security net and poison the target that cleanly. He swore to hunt the bastard down and personally execute him. Hibari looked deep into Enzo's eyes, seeing a fierce, righteous rage burning bright. Even though Enzo talked a big game, Hibari believed this guy was reliable. Enzo told Hibari to look at the customers chilling around the burger joint. The schoolgirls sitting nearby were happily eating, completely oblivious to the danger lurking around them. They believed ninjas were just fiction, and that was exactly the peace the underworld needed to protect. If they knew an assassin was standing right next to them, society would crash into mass hysteria. The mission of ninjas like them was to quietly protect the everyday lives of civilians. But the peaceful vibe of the restaurant quickly faded into an illusion. Replaced by a blood-soaked vision of enemy attacks, a harsh reminder that their current peace was under severe threat. Hibari listened closely, his eyes flashing with a rare seriousness. Enzo Hattori looked Hibari dead in the eye, dropping a massive request. He wanted Hibari to team up and hunt down that sadistic poison killer. Enzo argued that if Hibari really wanted a peaceful life, he couldn't just stand by and watch this tragedy continue. Hibari stayed silent, his gaze drifting as he weighed Enzo's offer. He lowered his head, sinking into his own private memories. Hibari reminded himself that he had always lived and acted on his master's orders. In his entire past life, he never had to make such massive decisions for himself. He wondered in this new era who would be the master he must loyally serve. The image of Oda Nobunaga flashed back with a bright smile, echoing his dream of a peaceful world he wanted Hibari to see. Hibari closed his eyes, feeling the noble wishes his late master had passed down. The peaceful world Lord Nobunaga yearned for might just be the reality he was living right now. Hibari opened his eyes, meeting Enzo's gaze with iron resolve. "I understand. I'll lend you my strength." Enzo Hattori was blown away by his senior's decisive answer. He cheered excitedly. "I owe you one. Having you is like getting 100 reinforcements." Enzo eagerly asked for his phone number to keep in touch and promised to report Hibari's status to the Shinoran Syndicate. Hibari looked confused, asking about the concept of a phone number, completely alien to someone from the past. Enzo laughed, quickly explaining the convenience of smartphones in this digital age. Hibari pulled out his phone and handed it to Enzo, looking pretty awkward. Looking at the screen, Enzo's jaw dropped. The wallpaper was a gorgeous red-haired girl posing with Hibari, with 240 missed calls from Yui. Enzo screamed in jealousy, interrogating him about the identity of the beautiful girl. Outside an apartment complex, a silhouette stood by the door, seemingly waiting for something. A girl with long, slender legs. Hibari strolled up to her after a day packed with wild surprises. Spotting Hibari, Yui blew a fuse, chewing him out for making her wait so long. Hibari sweated bullets, awkwardly apologizing to the furious girl in front of him. Yui kept nagging, ordering Hibari to carry all the luggage and open the door right now so she could rest. Hibari bitterly obeyed, putting up with her ridiculous demands. Yui suddenly leaned in close, sniffing out the smell of fast food on Hibari. She instantly guessed he went out for burgers and scolded him for not taking care of his health right after leaving the hospital. Yui lectured him strictly, calling junk food literal poison that wrecked the body. The word poison accidentally triggered Hibari's anxiety about the mystery assassin Enzo mentioned. Yui was an energetic college student and an acquaintance of Hibari's mom. She was trusted with the responsibility of taking care of and supervising Hibari after his discharge. Enzo looked at Yui's photo with heart-shaped eyes, swooning over her radiant beauty. Hibari casually asked if Enzo wanted to meet this girl, hyping him up even more. Back to business, Enzo started showing Hibari how to navigate home using the map app. Enzo's face turned dead serious as he handed out advice to his new partner. He warned Hibari to stay on high alert because a ninja could disguise themselves as anyone in society. Hibari pondered the invisible threats lurking around him. Raindrops began falling. Hibari stood quietly in the rain, looking up at the darkening sky. Hearing Yui yell at him to hurry up, he rushed to carry the heavy bags, chasing after her into the apartment. The rain poured harder, washing away all traces on the empty streets. Under a manhole cover, a mutated liquid hand belonging to the liquid ninja slowly crept out, signaling a deadly hunt was about to begin. The night rain battered the apartment complex, swallowing everything in a dead silence. Yui casually walked inside like she owned the place, leaving Hibari standing dumbfounded behind her. He stared at Yui's back, silently questioning the sudden arrival of this girl. Hibari told himself she was just an outsider, definitely having no ties to the lethal ninja world. But his warrior instincts kept him skeptical, wondering if this girl was actually trustworthy. Yui took a lap around the room, praising Hibari for keeping the place relatively clean and tidy. However, what bugged Hibari the most were the 2 massive suitcases she hauled in. He felt they were unnaturally heavy, definitely packing more than just normal clothes. Curiosity plastered on his face. Hibari wondered what Yui was hiding in that bulky luggage. Yui flashed a grin, announcing she brought him an incredibly special gift. He held his breath, waiting to see what would pop out once that zipper opened. Yui quickly rummaged through the pile, looking like she was about to pull out something crucial. Hibari immediately covered his face. He sensed something highly dangerous. Hibari frowned as Yui brought up the trouble at school, and the reason he pulled that reckless stunt earlier. She insisted that to beat guys stronger than him, Hibari needed to be prepared to the max. With a hyped-up face, she shoved a mysterious brown powder in his face like it was a magic elixir. Poison, the thought flashed through his mind, making him shiver in terror. Extreme dread hijacked Hibari's mind as he faced what he assumed was lethal poison. But it turned out to be just muscle-building protein. Yui held it up high like a priceless health artifact. Hibari looked clueless, stammering the alien word protein he'd never heard before. Yui plopped down on the floor, launching into a rant about how weak he'd been since he was a kid. She sighed, complaining that it had been 10 years, yet his stamina hadn't improved a bit. A loud thud echoed as a heavy dumbbell was yanked out of the suitcase and dropped right in front of Hibari. Hibari stared wide-eyed at the black chunk of iron, wondering what she planned to do with all this heavy junk. Yui laid out an entire arsenal of workout gear, claiming Hibari's current body was way too skinny and frail. Everything from dumbbells to an ob roller was put on display, locked and loaded for a brutal training regimen. She sighed, saying if he kept this up, she'd be too worried to even sleep at night. Hibari blankly picked up the dumbbell, still not grasping the real purpose of this gear. Seeing him fumble, Yui jumped right in to demonstrate how to use every single piece of equipment with burning passion. He quietly watched the girl sweating through her workout, starting to see her concern in a new light. Yui squeezed the hand grips until her face turned red, trying to prove that building muscle was no joke. Hibari realized this girl wasn't an enemy. She genuinely cared for him like family. Yui nudged Hibari, asking herself out loud why she had to bend over backwards worrying about him this much. Her eyes softened, revealing she owed Hibari's mom big time and couldn't just ignore him. That's why she decided to move in, to personally oversee his training. Flashing a bright smile, Yui warned Hibari never to think about doing anything stupid ever again. Hibari stood in silence looking at the energetic girl, feeling a bizarre sense of peace slowly settling in. A moment of hesitation crossed his mind. He wondered if he should reveal he wasn't the Hibari she used to know. He was about to open his mouth and explain his true identity, but paused, not knowing where to start. Before he could speak, Yui stretched and groaned about being tired, complaining she was drenched in sweat from the trip. Saying that, she casually stripped off her outer jacket right in front of Hibari to go take a shower. Hibari froze, his eyes bugging out in pure shock at Yui's bold and totally unguarded action. Yui innocently announced she was gonna borrow the shower and told Hibari to get a towel ready for her. Hibari caught her tossed clothes, mentally crying over where human decency had vanished to in the last 500 years. In the bathroom, Yui happily enjoyed the cold water, completely oblivious to the lethal danger creeping up on her. Outside, Hibari sat cross-legged on the floor, trying to keep his mind pure in this ridiculous situation. He scrolled through Yui's photos on his phone, quietly verifying this girl's background. According to the previous host's memories, she was just an acquaintance of his mom, a normal civilian. An instant later, an electric jolt shot through his mind. His ninja instincts flared up violently. His eyes turned sharp. He sensed a faint but lethal killing intent prowling nearby. The heavy rain drumming against the balcony cranked up the grim, high-pressure atmosphere. Hibari remembered that the recent string of mystery disappearances always happened on nights with torrential rain like this. Immediately, Hibari shifted into max alert, refusing to miss a single microscopic change in his surroundings. Rain is prime time for ninjas, masking footsteps and breathing flawlessly. He started mapping out the apartment's layout, noting this place only had one main entrance. Next up were the windows, 3 on the first floor, 2 on the upper level. He meticulously calculated every possible route an enemy could use to breach the house. Hibari silently guarded every exit, swearing he wouldn't let a single intruder slip past his eyes. However, he underestimated his opponent by ignoring a spot nobody would ever suspect. Under the bathroom floor, a sickly green liquid started bubbling up from the drain, morphing into a grotesque shape. The enemy had infiltrated through the underground pipes, a route Hibari was completely blind to. While Yui was chilling with her eyes closed under the warm water, she suddenly felt a bizarre presence right behind her. The young girl flinched, a bone-chilling shiver running down her spine. A slimy green entity slowly materialized through the steam, closing in on the unarmed girl. The monster cracked open its hideous face, revealing jagged teeth and a long, hungry tongue. Yui's eyes widened in horror as she realized a psycho intruder was standing right inside her bathroom. A blood-curdling scream rang out. Yui was in absolute panic facing the freakish creature right next to her. The monster flashed a demonic grin, looking incredibly hyped to see its prey spiraling into despair. A thunderous punch smashed through the steam from outside, caving right into the attacker's face. Hibari rushed in for the save, shielding the terrified, cowering Yui. Yui choked out Hibari's name, his arrival serving as her final beacon of hope. But Hibari's face dropped as he realized his punch didn't leave a single dent on the enemy's body. It felt like punching water. All the kinetic force was entirely absorbed by the monster's liquid form. Hibari tossed her the towel and yelled at Yui to find cover fast so he could handle this freak. Yui frantically grabbed the towel and sprinted out, doing exactly what Hibari said. Hibari blocked the doorway, his razor-sharp eyes locking onto every twitch of the bizarre creature in front of him. The enemy started bubbling up from the tub, a massive blob of green water taking shape. Hibari mentally confirmed this guy was a ninja, but one with a ridiculously rare shape-shifting ability. The monster let out a savage, crackling laugh, amused by the kid's resistance. He praised Hibari's detection skills, nodding that few others ever pulled that off. Hibari coldly interrogated the mastermind behind the recent murder spree, demanding his true objective. The monster sneered, mocking the little goldfish swimming around inside his chest cavity. He called Hibari a fool for thinking he would just spill classified intel like that. His freakish finger poked the poor fish, flexing his cruelty and his habit of playing with his food before the kill. The liquid ninja dropped a sick deal. He would consider sparing Hibari's life if he handed Yui over. Hibari stood frozen at the stranger's vile demand. He kept commenting on Yui's looks with a sleazy tone, claiming she looked like a pro model. The liquid ninja licked his lips greedily, confessing he loved tasting the sweet tears of women right before they died. Hibari let his voice drop, his eyes hiding a rage that was hitting its absolute peak. "Then I'll send you straight to hell," Hibari declared, the purifying aura around him erupting fiercer than ever. Hibari clenched his fists with pure resolve. Meanwhile, the water monster glowed with an intimidating light. The liquid ninja growled triumphantly, reminding Hibari that the power of water was truly terrifying. He began casting water-style, fluid body possession, turning his entire body into a restless mass of liquid. Hibari recognized the anomaly, since his previous strike didn't leave a single scratch on his face. "What about your heart, then?" Hibari roared, slamming another devastating punch straight into his chest. But his fist only caused water to splash out, failing to hit any solid organs. Frustration and anger painted the young man's face, as all his efforts proved useless. He realized in shock that the enemy could liquefy his entire body at will. The liquid ninja glared at Hibari with murderous intent. He had figured out how to end this fight. Out of nowhere, the liquid ninja's water fist blasted straight into Hibari's face. The unexpected strike left Hibari wide-eyed. He coldly declared he would choke off Hibari's airways from the inside out until he was dead. Hibari choked on the water, horrified to realize the enemy was forcefully squeezing deep into his body. He desperately tried to grab the liquid form, but it was useless. Things were going south fast. Hibari's eyes bulged in terror, feeling the liquid ninja brutally forcing his way inside him. Hibari realized in horror that the monster wasn't just attacking from the outside. It was literally crawling into his internal organs. The liquid ninja laughed triumphantly, planning to cut off his oxygen and crush him from the inside. Hibari gasped for air, clawing at his own throat, but the opponent's fluid body gave him zero leverage. The situation was dire. The core issue was the affinity of ninjutsu, the deciding factor of power in the ninja world. The two base affinities were fire and water. Alongside lightning, earth, and wind, they made up the 5 basic ninjutsu affinities. Normally, after brutal training, a ninja would awaken and wield one of these elemental affinities. Rarely, some possessed special variant affinities. Take Enzo Hattori. His smoke arts was a variant branch of fire style. But Gaku was a bizarre exception. He never awakened a single elemental affinity during his entire training arc. Instead, he clawed his way to the top of history solely by maxing out his physical conditioning. For Gaku, ninjutsu was simply turning his mortal body into a weapon of mass destruction. However, for a pure physical brawler like him, a guy who could liquefy his body like the liquid ninja was a massive counter. The disgusting green water just kept shoving down Hibari's throat, leaving him helpless. He fought to resist, but his lungs started screaming in pain from the lack of oxygen. Hibari's eyes rolled back, his consciousness fading as the monster started flooding his chest cavity. The liquid ninja laughed maniacally, ordering the kid to be a good boy and just die. But Hibari wasn't even close to quitting. He still had one final trump card. He compressed all his remaining ninjutsu into his fist, generating a colossal surge of energy. A thunderous punch smashed right through the bathroom wall, blowing a massive hole in it. The liquid ninja was stunned, failing to grasp why he would do that. Hibari vaulted out the hole in the wall, throwing himself into the night. He hit the ground, vomiting streams of green water, leaving the monster bewildered. He wondered what kind of crazy scheme the kid was pulling, running out into the pouring rain like this. The monster sneered, assuming oxygen deprivation made Hibari lose his mind. He believed the heavy rain only made him stronger. He flashed a nasty grin, convinced he had this fight in the bag. Hibari stood up silently under the rain, his eyes retaining an absolute calm. He whispered that he lured him out here on purpose. The liquid ninja got annoyed, daring Hibari to try and run if he still could. Hibari's sheer calmness started creeping the monster out. He told himself his suffocation lock was flawless. He tried to reassure himself that Hibari suffocating was only a matter of time. He was dying to see the kid beg on his knees. The liquid ninja boiled over when told to run away. He had never been disrespected like this. He frantically liquefied his body, curling into a vicious tidal wave. He believed that calm act was pure bluff, and he wasn't about to let his prey slip away. He shoved the water down Hibari's throat again, dead set on executing him right there. The green water suffocated Hibari's face, sealing off every path for oxygen. He thrashed around in despair, clawing at his face only to meet freezing blocks of liquid. The monster growled, relishing the sight of Hibari agonizingly tearing at himself. Out of nowhere, Hibari vaulted high into the air. Everything seemed to be going exactly as he planned. He launched himself into the sky, aiming straight for a nearby utility pole. The liquid ninja looked up in utter confusion. He couldn't figure out what the kid was trying to pull up there. Hibari reached out and grabbed the crackling high-voltage power line. Electricity surged through him, forming a blinding blue web. The liquid ninja's face drained of color as he realized his fatal mistake. That was the ultimate counter to water. Power lines? Hibari was gambling with something entirely alien to this era. The monster panicked, vaguely piecing together the kid's insane strategy. This was a deathmatch to see who had the more insane endurance. Hibari was betting his life on a razor-thin sliver of hope. A massive current blasted straight into Hibari's body, creating a terrifying pressure. He endured the flesh-tearing agony. Lightning flashed across the sky, blue light engulfing Hibari's dangling figure. He gritted his teeth, refusing to let go. The liquid ninja let out a blood-curdling scream. Electricity was the natural enemy of water. It was roasting him alive inside the host. Hibari's eyes bulged from the pain, but he gripped the wire like it was his final lifeline. A true ninja knows how to weaponize nature itself. Of course, a guy straight out of the Sengoku era had no clue what a power line was. But ninjas are superhumans who can sense natural energy and pull it into their bodies. Hibari was no exception. At his tier, he could sense the 5 base elements as clearly as tasting food or smelling perfume. He just followed his gut. He smelled an absurd amount of lightning energy pooled inside this weird black wire. He decided to bet everything on it. The electricity tearing through his body hurt so bad he couldn't breathe, but it was also forcing the intruder out. He roared under the torment of the lightning. Hibari's eyes rolled back, his body convulsing violently under thousands of volts. He was using his own life to force the enemy out. Finally, Hibari hit his limit, his broken body plummeting down. He gasped for air, feeling like his heart had flatlined for a second. An instant later, his eyes snapped open wide. Blobs of water started forcing their way out of his mouth. The monster was getting warped by the current. Unable to take it anymore, he clawed his way out of Hibari's body. The liquid ninja plummeted to the asphalt, his body completely deformed. High above, Hibari clung to the wire, watching him fall. The liquid ninja splatted onto the ground, paralyzed by the shock. He was completely powerless against this suicidal attack. He groaned, unable to maintain his liquid form any longer. He realized in horror that he got evicted and scrambled to crawl away. He needed to turn back into water and escape right now. Thud, the sound of Hibari landing softly. He wasn't about to give him a chance to run. The rain started letting up, stripping away the water-style ninja's final advantage. Hibari glared at him with icy eyes, ready for the finisher. The liquid ninja watched in terror as Hibari approached, knowing his time was up. He was paralyzed with fear under the kid's overwhelming pressure. Hibari brutally grabbed his freakishly long tongue, making him shriek in pain. Zero mercy for the scum who dared violate his body. He hoisted the monster high into the air, ignoring his desperate thrashing. Lethal sparks of electricity still danced around Hibari. Hibari growled, "Playtime with water is over." His eyes flared with a frigid blue light signaling the end. Hibari's electrified fist was locked and loaded. The water-style ninja's eyes bulged, sensing death approaching. The monster screamed in panic, but it was too late. Hibari's fist closed in on the target. A devastating punch blasted the liquid ninja into the sky. The whole block seemed to light up for a split second from the lightning radiating off Hibari. He shot straight up into the air before free-falling, entirely paralyzed. Hibari's power was leagues beyond his comprehension. He slammed into the dirt, his body looking shattered, with zero signs of life left. The fight ended in a flash after Hibari's finisher. The arrogant freak from earlier was now just a gray puddle of slime lying dead on the ground. He got utterly demolished by an outdated ninja. The goldfish flopped out of his body, marking the end of the battle. Status incapacitated, a pathetic end for the guy who dared to challenge Hibari. Hibari stood in silence, watching the goldfish gasping in the rain. His rage had somewhat cooled off. He gently reached down, scooping up the poor little goldfish. He looked lost in thought, staring at the spoils of his victory. Hibari examined the fish in his palm, his eyes reflecting on this bizarre ninja world packed with freaks. He looked up at the sky, feeling the final raindrops hit his face. The battle was over, but the nightmare was probably just starting. Hibari stared at the goldfish, sighing when he saw his apartment wrecked. He knew he had a lot of explaining to do for Yui. He groaned in pain. Even with his body fortified by ninjutsu, the damage from that massive electric shock was severe. He started dragging himself back to the apartment. Hibari looked down at his shredded uniform, his body still reeling from the megavoltage shock. He didn't expect it to hurt that much. "I'm pretty lucky I was up against a water-style user," Hibari mumbled, looking exhausted. He pushed the door open, thinking that if he faced a real lightning-style master, he probably wouldn't have survived. He needed to train harder. Hibari walked inside, breathing heavily. His body had hit its absolute breaking point after that high-stakes battle. In the corner of the closet, Yui sat huddled up, wearing nothing but a thin towel. She was shaking in terror after witnessing that madness. Hearing the noise, Yui jumped and looked up. Her eyes showed pure shock and relief seeing Hibari back. Hibari looked at his friend and softly reassured her. "It's okay, it's all over." Yui stared blankly at him, cold sweat still dripping down her forehead. She couldn't believe she was actually safe. Hibari stood there, his shredded school uniform proving just how brutal that fight was. His clothes are completely ruined, Yui thought. She wondered what the hell Hibari did and what that monster even was. "Hibari," Yui whispered his name, her voice still trembling. She looked down, her mind swarming with questions about what Hibari just endured to save her life. Out of nowhere, Yui collapsed onto Hibari. He flinched in shock at her unexpected move. Hibari's eyes went wide, having zero clue how to react with Yui pressed up against him. I can't stand up. Give me a hand," Yui whispered, her entire body still trembling from the residual fear. Hibari's face turned bright red, stammering, all right." Yui leaned hard against Hibari, her cheeks flushing pink. Meanwhile, Hibari was so panicked he didn't know what to do with his hands. Yui's small hands gripped Hibari's shirt tight, searching for a solid anchor. "Thanks for saving me," Yui whispered, resting her head on his chest. The teenager froze, his heart hammering in his chest. Hibari's face burned like a ripe tomato. He had never been this close to a girl in a situation like this. Suddenly, Hibari scooped Yui up in a princess carry. Yui jumped, not expecting him to be that bold. "Hey, what are you doing? Put me down right now," Yui shrieked, embarrassed and annoyed. Turns out it was a massive misunderstanding. Hibari thought she needed to be carried, while Yui just wanted him to help her walk. Got it, Hibari awkwardly explained. He let Yui lean on his shoulder to support her more normally. Yui was still blushing, stumbling as she walked next to Hibari. Silence swallowed them both for a second. Earlier I called you a weakling. I'm sorry. Yui mumbled, refusing to make eye contact. Seeing Yui regain her composure, Hibari felt a wave of relief. He teased, "You're looking a lot better now." Hibari flashed a gentle smile at Yui. Amidst the rubble, the bond between the two seemed to level up. A bit later, Hibari was on a video call with Enzo Hattori. "Got it, a water-style ninja," Enzo analyzed after hearing the report. Enzo continued through the screen. "All right, I'll contact the Ninja Association. They'll dispatch a retrieval team to lock him up ASAP." Enzo was chilling on a high-rise rooftop, scoping out the city at night while talking to Hibari. He looked pretty hyped that the mission was a success. The screen showed the bald ninja lying unconscious on the bed. Enzo wondered if this was the serial killer they were hunting. "I'm not so sure," Enzo pondered. "But if his ninjutsu is liquefaction, it explains how he could vanish and reappear whenever it rained." Hibari held up the cup with the goldfish to the camera. He revealed this guy had been stalking Enzo and him during their earlier fight. Hibari sat in his room, keeping an eye on the paralyzed ninja on the bed. The goldfish, the liquid ninja's true host, swam in the tiny cup. He nodded, agreeing with Enzo's logic. The pieces were falling into place regarding the attacker's identity. Enzo Hattori kept deducing, maybe he's trying to wipe out the other ninjas to secure his dominance over this turf. That's always a possibility. Without warning, Enzo spotted something seriously wrong on the screen. His eyes bugged out in terror. "Hey Hibari, behind you!" Enzo screamed his lungs out over the phone, trying to warn him. Hibari whipped around and froze. A massive swarm of frogs appeared out of nowhere, crawling all over the unconscious ninja. The freaky green frogs swarmed the ninja's face and body, an insanely disgusting and haunting sight. "This is bad, Hibari," Enzo roared. "If that's enemy ninjutsu, they only have one objective. The sole purpose of these monsters, to silence him and cut off the intel." Enzo screamed in panic. "Damn it, they're here to execute the failed ninja. Hibari, I'm counting on you. He's a massive intel goldmine." A giant frog flicked its bright red, threatening tongue. Hibari realized the threat. "No way, those are poison dart frogs." Through the phone, Enzo kept screaming, "Don't let them do it." In unison, the long, spear-like tongues shot from the frogs straight at the unconscious ninja on the bed. "Don't let him die," Enzo roared. Hibari gritted his teeth, thinking, "I won't make it in time." In that split second, Hibari knew he had to act, with zero margin for error. He concentrated all his ninjutsu into his fingertips, a glowing blue light wrapping around his rapidly moving hands. At breakneck speed, Hibari snatched the pens off the desk to use as improvised weapons. He spun and launched a devastating throw. The pens turned into hidden projectiles, tearing through the air. The entire sequence took a mere 0.05 seconds. The brilliant blue streaks bolted straight for the freakish frogs. Blood splattered as the pens impaled the frogs. Hibari successfully shut down the first wave. A green frog got pinned down by a ballpoint pen, dying instantly. Hibari executed the whole swarm flawlessly, not leaving a single one alive. But Hibari's eyes narrowed as he noticed something wrong. One tongue was still moving. Hibari watched in horror as a frog, by the window, launched its tongue forward. The long, venom-laced tongue shot straight for the bald ninja's neck. A fatal strike pierced the prisoner's throat. Fresh blood sprayed out, dyeing the white pillow red. The poor ninja only managed a final groan of agony before the venom kicked in. Hibari stood rooted to the spot, his face twisting in absolute shock. He had failed to protect their only witness. "He's done for." The ninja's entire body started bubbling with tumors, and blood kept geysering from his neck. The young Hibari stood frozen, watching the ninja writhe, his mouth hanging wide open in his death throes. An instant later, a horrific blood explosion erupted from the wound, blasting everything away. Hibari leaned back to dodge, his sharp eyes scanning for the attacker. He unleashed a blindingly fast slash toward the window, where a green frog was reeling its tongue back in. A sharp asterisk SH wing echoed, and the frog was instantly sliced in half by the pressure of Hibari's swing. The frog burst into a cloud of white smoke and vanished. Hibari rushed to the window to check. Gone, Hibari stared blankly at the empty window. The green frog had completely vanished. Only the two green frogs pinned by the pens remained on the mattress, thick white smoke rising from them. In a flash, the frog corpses vanished entirely, leaving behind only a dark pool of blood. Hibari stood in the smoke-filled room, sweat pouring down his face from the intense pressure. Enzo popped up on the phone screen, anxiously grilling him about the water-style ninja's status. Hibari stared at the blood pool on the bed, bitterly reporting that the enemy got silenced right in front of him. Over the phone, Enzo noted these symptoms perfectly matched the recent string of serial murders. Hibari asked about the frogs, but got told they vanished without a trace. Then it's obvious. Enzo confirmed there was definitely a mastermind pulling the strings. Sitting on the roof, Enzo confidently declared there was a much higher tier, poison user involved. The orange-haired guy gritted his teeth in frustration. All their hard work securing a lead just went down the drain. However, Hibari wasn't giving up. He spotted a crucial detail on the victim's corpse. The dragon tattoo on his back looked strange. The ink seemed like it had only penetrated the skin less than a month ago. Hearing that, Enzo flinched in shock, his eyes wide with suspicion. This meant that just a month ago, this water-style user was nothing but an average civilian. Enzo explained that the ninja tattoo was a highly guarded secret art. There was no way someone could acquire it that easily. An amateur transforming into a water-style monster in such a short time was beyond impossible. Hibari connected the dots, realizing the enemy's scheme was way more massive than they thought. The poison user was quietly raising an army of disposable pawns out of normal civilians. They possessed a method to forcefully and rapidly awaken ninjutsu power. Enzo worriedly wondered how they got their hands on such terrifying tech. Hibari's eyes went dark. He sensed a massive threat looming over the entire city. But this is seriously bad, Enzo screamed into the phone, imagining the upcoming nightmare. If they didn't stop this fast, swarms of civilians would suddenly awaken their ninjutsu and go out of control. Then the whole city would turn into a slaughterhouse as neighbors started butchering each other. Enzo broke into a cold sweat, shuddering at the chaotic vision playing in his head. He suggested bringing the water-style ninja's corpse to the Ninja Association for a deep-dive autopsy. Enzo banked on the drug or surgery scars on the corpse being the key to tracking down the boss. Hibari gave a slight nod, his eyes still holding a deep anxiety about what was coming. Standing under the full moon, Enzo officially extended an invite for Hibari to join the Ninja Association. He wanted to introduce Hibari to the commander, so he could legally jump into the raid against the killers. Understood, Hibari replied bluntly, his gaze locked firmly on the phone screen. Looking out the window, Hibari saw the moon shining bright, signaling an unavoidable war. Hibari made up his mind. It was time for him to head straight to the Ninja Association and clean up this mess. The scene abruptly shifted to a mysterious, humid tropical jungle. A pair of eyes snapped open, shining with pure terror. Seizu woke up, finding himself lying on the cold dirt in the middle of a bizarre jungle. "My hands and legs are tied. Who the hell did this?" Seizu questioned, feeling his legs bound by rough ropes. He flexed hard, but the ropes only dug deeper into his wrists. Seizu took a deep breath to steady his nerves. He reminded himself he was a pro ninja from the association. Memories came flooding back. Seizu recalled he was right in the middle of a covert op in the city. Just moments before, Seizu was carefully tracking his target from above. A freaky purple smoke appeared out of nowhere, swallowing Seizu from behind. "This smell, what the hell is this?" Seizu gagged from the bizarre scent. The smoke flooded the zone, making his vision blur and his head spin. "Did I get drugged and dragged to this hellhole?" Seizu wondered, collapsing onto the ground. He bitterly realized he walked right into a trap without even knowing who the enemy was. The air here was hot and muggy, exactly like a suffocating miniature rainforest. In the distance, a giant green frog unhinged its blood-red jaw, letting out freakish noises. Sweating buckets, Seizu felt a bone-chilling killing intent closing in. He scanned the area, desperately hunting for an escape route in this dense jungle. A silhouette slowly stepped out from the bushes. "Oh, you're awake." A woman rocking fiery red hair and a bizarre four-eyed mask emerged. She smirked wickedly. Seizu jumped, yelling, "You, who are you?" The woman just sneered, looking totally chill, like she was just playing with her food. Seizu intentionally stalled for time, answering her taunt. "You wanna play riddles? What do I get if I guess right?" In his head, he was aggressively calculating how to dislocate his joints to slip the ropes. Seizu channeled all his strength into his hands, ready to pull off a masterclass escape tech. But a wave of paralysis slammed into him, draining the color from his face in pure terror. "My arms, why are they so heavy?" Seizu realized he couldn't even control his own hands. The woman stepped closer, stating all his efforts were useless. "The only thing you can move right now is your neck up." She called him a pickle soaked perfectly in neurotoxin, making Seizu's neck veins bulge in fury. Seizu stared in shock as he pieced together who she was. "Poison! You're the poison user from the serial murders." "Seems I'm more famous than I thought." She giggled, but then dropped a chilling line. She wasn't the one cooking up the poison. She held her hand out for a green frog to hop onto, claiming they were the real poison craftsmen. Seizu was horrified by the absolute insanity standing in front of him. His eyes widened in pure disgust. The woman pampered the toad, mesmerized by its vibrant colors, calling it a jewel-like beauty. She pulled out a weird tube and squeezed out a thick glob of liquid. Instantly, the toad shot its long tongue out, greedily devouring the concoction. "I'm simply feeding them," she explained, looking insanely satisfied. The toad's throat bulged as it swallowed the toxic-laced meal. The poison refinement process activated inside the frogs, brewing ultra-lethal toxins that spread like glowing particles. The red-haired woman stood in the jungle, bragging about the joy of crafting these lethal treats for her frogs. "So those mass murders were just part of your sick experiments?" Seizu roared in absolute fury. She casually admitted it, comparing using humans for tests to using lab rats. She still wasn't satisfied because the current poison was too weak. A haunting close-up of the eye of the one carrying the Grim Reaper. The red-haired woman cradled the frog, her eyes gleaming with madness. "I wonder what the results will be this time." The frog opened its mouth and made a freaky noise, ringing the death knell for the unlucky victim. This hellish garden was swarming with green frogs packed with lethal venom, just waiting to strike. Seizu lay there, utterly powerless. She stood tall, declaring she needed an even deadlier poison for the upcoming war. This time, she kicked off a new brutal cycle on her prey's body. "I want a poison that can melt flesh and bone until there's zero trace left." In a flash, the frog on her hand launched its long, spear-like tongue straight down. "You," Seizu screamed, clenching his teeth, his eyes burning bright red. A flaming sigil flared on Seizu's forehead, his eyes blazing in ultimate agony. A burst of fire-style jutsu erupted, spawning a fireball right in the woman's face. The red-haired woman smiled with pure satisfaction behind her mask. "Thanks for being the sacrifice for my experiment." A glowing red tongue pierced straight through the fire, signaling the end of a life. The lethal tongue struck Seizu dead in the forehead. He screamed in agony as the horrific toxin began its destructive work. "Aagh!" His face warped grotesquely, his flesh melting off like wax. A blood-curdling scream echoed as Seizu's body dissolved into a sickening pool of sludge. In a fraction of a second, all that remained of Seizu was a bleached skull sitting in the mud. The woman called her partner back. She stroked the toad, her voice dripping with pride and amusement. "Looks like I mixed it flawlessly. Just as I thought, this is the strongest batch." On the ground, Seizu's gear was reduced to rags floating in the sludge. She raised the toad to eye level, obsessing over the poison ninjutsu, masterpiece she had chased for so long. A sick, twisted kiss for the creature of death, marking the completion of an unmatched poison. The scene cut to the bustling Tokyo station at night, where bright lights masked dark secrets. Inside a descending elevator, Hibari and Enzo stood in silence, deep beneath the endless flow of people. They were heading to a massive, hidden underground space 180 meters down, where a bridge led to an imposing manor. The entrance gate was decked out with a gigantic, menacing demon mask. This was the Ninja Association HQ. A stone-paved path led deep into the ancient manor, wrapped in hazy smoke. Enzo led the way for Hibari. Both wore dead serious expressions, ready for whatever came next. Hibari was blown away by the sheer scale of the place, thinking, there's actually a manor like this buried underground. Footsteps crunched on the gravel, a purple kimono gliding over the ancient path. A white-haired girl with a deadpan face appeared, holding a birdcage with a red parrot inside. "Welcome." The parrot suddenly greeted Hibari, sounding like an old dude. Hibari stared blankly at the bird. It told him to bear with it, since the old man had to show up looking like this. The parrot introduced itself as Bansin, commander of the Ninja Association. He said to skip the formalities. Hibari needed to take a test right now. Hibari and Enzo exchanged a look, starting to sense the gravity of this boss hiding in the shadows. Bansin explained his jutsu allowed him to borrow the eyes and mouths of animals for remote comms. The girl, Shizu, handled taking care of the animals here. Shizu bowed respectfully. Enzo whispered that even he had never seen Bansin's real face. The guy was insanely secretive. The parrot locked eyes with him. He hoped Hibari wouldn't mind him not showing his face. Hibari nodded, knowing that a ninja exposing his face was a quick way to get killed, especially a boss. He respected the hustle. The parrot replied, highly satisfied that Hibari knew the deal. Hibari cut straight to the chase. "So, what exactly is this test?" Enzo quickly backed his bro, hyping Hibari's raw power, arguing they should just send him to hunt the poison user instead of wasting time testing him. Bansin countered, saying he didn't doubt Enzo's report, but issuing an official license required following protocol. Hibari listened, his face as unfazed as ever. The commander explained he couldn't greenlight a license without knowing the kid's elemental affinity and ninjutsu tier. Shizu stood quietly, listening. Hibari bluntly admitted, "My ninjutsu doesn't have an affinity." The parrot replied coldly, "I know." An illustration of blazing fire style and refreshing water style popped up, followed by flashing lightning style, rock-solid earth style, and chaotic wind style. Bansin brought up how the old Hibari never had any of those affinities either. Relying purely on baseline physical enhancement, Hibari still clawed his way to the top. The image of the legendary Gaku flashed back. The legend of the ninja Gaku still echoed in the modern era. A lone man standing on a battlefield packed with enemy corpses. But Bansin stressed, the body he was piloting right now belonged to Hibari, a totally different person. Hibari stared at the parrot, listening to the old man break down his evolution. Swapping bodies meant he might have inherited new talents. Maybe his current ninjutsu was just unawakened. Enzo sweated bullets, realizing he entirely missed that crucial detail. Ninjutsu is the manifestation of nature's power flowing through the body. Hibari started taking this seriously. If the body changed, the natural elemental affinity could shift too. The elemental chart spun around a meditating silhouette. A black cat strolled out meowing, carrying a candle on its back. A single candle was lit in the darkness. Hibari and Enzo stared at the candle, waiting for the next phase. The parrot dropped a provocative question, "Don't you want to find out?" The cat stood proud with the candle holder on its back. Bansin asked, "What is your affinity?" All three locked eyes on the parrot. Curiosity was stamped clearly on their faces. The commander declared, "The Tomi ritual begins." In the massive, dead-silent hall, Hibari sat cross-legged facing the tiny candle. Enzo and Shizu stood by, watching the heavy ritual. Shizu kept a tight grip on her birdcage. Hibari closed his eyes, executing the Kyujian hand seals. The candle flame started flickering. An overwhelming pressure violently erupted, shaking the air in the room. Hibari's power was breaking loose. Enzo started sweating buckets from the insane aura. Shizu's eyes showed a flicker of shock, too. Hibari sat calmly before the candle, prepping the Kyujian seals to awaken his power. The first seal, Rin, kickstarted the process, gathering a massive pool of energy inside him. Next was Pyo, the tempo speeding up as his ninjutsu was refined. Hibari ran through To and Sha, the core steps to polish his ninjutsu to pure perfection. Followed by Kai, Jin, and Retsu, systematically awakening the dormant power inside him. And finally, Zai and Zen, completing the 9 ancient seals to fully unchain his strength. A brilliant aura of ninjutsu exploded around Hibari, bathing his entire body in blinding light. Enzo was blown away. Hibari's ninjutsu had hardened to diamond tier just by weaving signs. The ritual's pressure flooded the room, suffocating both Shizu and Enzo. The parrot squinted, not expecting the kid's power to hit such a monstrous level. Shizu started gasping for air, her body shaking violently under Hibari's crushing dominance. Sweating heavily, Shizu gritted her teeth, enduring the terrifying weight pressing down on her. Bansine spoke through the parrot, warning Shizu not to push it and to close her eyes before she got hurt. Following orders, the kid fought back the dizzy spell hitting her. Bansine noted Shizu wasn't high-level enough to tank this aura with all 5 senses yet. Shizu squeezed her eyes shut, looking exhausted but still obeying the command. All eyes were now glued to the candle, the ultimate catalyst for the Tomi ritual. This was the test to pinpoint ninjutsu affinity by channeling refined power straight into the flame. If it was fire style, the flame would erupt violently. If it was earth style, the flame's color would completely mutate. Back in reality, Hibari pushed his remaining energy to the max, extending his hands toward the candle to await the verdict. His eyes shined with heavy expectations, wondering what his ninjutsu affinity actually was. The energy peaked, a blinding flash enveloping the ancient candle holder. Yet, the flame kept burning normally, without a single twitch or mutation. Enzo froze for a few seconds, unable to process the result playing out in front of him. Both Shizu and Enzo were dead silent. The candle burned as if zero apocalyptic ninjutsu had hit it. Hibari's aura faded, and he stared at the flame, looking a bit let down that nothing happened. The ritual clearly ended without changing the flame's color or shape one bit. Even the red parrot looked stunned by this bizarre, anticlimactic ending. Hibari let out a breath, relaxing his muscles after dumping his entire energy pool into the test. He shrugged with a dry laugh. Looks like I'm still affinity-less, just like my past life. Enzo groaned in disappointment. All that hype just went up in smoke. Hibari scratched his head, saying he lived fine without an affinity, so it really wasn't a big deal. Enzo was still salty, yelling that he was totally expecting an earth-shattering explosion. The red parrot watched the 2 young guys bickering in the middle of the hall. Bansine's eyes looked deep in thought. The old man was definitely calculating something massive. How strange, he muttered to himself. Behind the curtain, Bansine in his traditional gear wondered how a guy with god-tier ninjutsu could lack an affinity. That was supposed to be impossible. He softly called Shizu, making the kid snap to attention toward the curtain. Bansine ordered Shizu not to blow out the candle, but to leave it exactly as is so he could get it investigated immediately. Shizu bowed deeply. Understood, sir. The kid walked off quietly, her kimono gliding across the floor as she carried out her orders. Anyway, the test is done. The red parrot wrapped things up, while Shizu carefully brought a tray over. Hibari and Enzo were still dazed by the results. Shizu handed Hibari his license tag on a wooden tray, warning him to guard it with his life. Hibari grabbed the tag, looking deep in thought. Behind him, Enzo watched his every move. The parrot explained that with this tag, Hibari had the green light to use ninjutsu in the city, as long as civilians didn't see. If association members pressed him, he just had to flash the tag, but Bansine had one more crucial detail to drop. It was about the water-style ninja Hibari crushed the other day. Specifically, the bizarre marks left on his body after the fight. The autopsy report just came in. Both Hibari and Enzo zeroed in the second they heard that. Shizu presented a blue scroll. Bansine ordered them to read the intel and burn it immediately. Hibari took the top-secret scroll. Enzo gasped when he saw the lead on the poison user. Bansine officially welcomed Hibari into the Ninja Association, hoping he'd use his power for peace. Hibari stated that's what he had been doing all along. The two headed back to school, where the walls were covered in messy graffiti. Enzo spun the secret scroll on his fingertip like a pro. He pondered the fact that the poison user might be hiding in plain sight. Enzo scanned the classrooms, watching the students go about their day. He suspected the target was lurking right inside this very school. Enzo took a drag from his vape, while Hibari kept his cold poker face. Thinking about tearing apart this massive school made Enzo groan. He snapped his fingers, sparking a tiny flame that incinerated the scroll instantly. Hibari concluded that since his house got hit last night, his cover was 100% blown. Enzo stressed out because they were entirely on the defensive. Hibari smirked, showing zero fear regarding their current mess. They walked into the school's main building together. From high above, a mysterious pink-haired silhouette watched them, holding a white four-eyed mask behind her back. It was the poison user, smirking cryptically at them from behind the white mask. A dark shadow with a terrifying grin reflected on the classroom window. Hibari and Enzo walked up the empty stairs in silence. Enzo couldn't stop thinking that the enemy could be anywhere in the school. They pushed deeper inside, a heavy silence swallowing the hallway. The poison user was genuinely on a whole other level. Rewind a few hours to an empty park. Hibari was holding a mouth-watering beef bowl. He scarfed it down, while Enzo was buried in a stack of files. Hibari thought eating beef with white rice was literally a dream. He grabbed a massive chunk of meat and chewed aggressively. The flavor explosion made Hibari's eyes bug out. His pure bliss left Enzo speechless. He went back to the intel Bansine dug up. Hibari asked what the files said. Enzo revealed that Water-style Ninja was just an average civilian who got mutated recently. Hibari took the file to see for himself. It showed a picture of Shizuku Jiso, a single water company employee who looked nothing like an assassin. Shizu was busy feeding the fish. She mentioned Jiso loved his fish more than his own life. Right now, Boss Bansine had confiscated all the fish and was taking great care of them. Hibari just listened quietly. Back to the present, Hibari and Enzo sat in the park. Hibari was focused on his beef bowl, while Enzo studied the classified files. The autopsy on the Water-style Ninja found a microscopic mark on his tattooed body. It was an insanely precise needle puncture. You'd miss it if you weren't looking hard. That detail caught Hibari off guard, making him pay closer attention to the files. Enzo stated Jiso's sudden ninjutsu awakening was definitely tied to whatever got injected through that needle. Shinoran's intel network tracked the signature and found the secret lab mass-producing these needles. The needles were manufactured with insane precision on a hidden assembly line. Bansine tapped into his animal spy network to track the shipments. And shockingly, the final destination was the exact high school Hibari and Enzo attended. Hibari sat deep in thought after hearing the bombshell from his partner. He quietly picked up a dry branch from the ground. Hibari concluded the poison user was hiding outright in their school. He whipped out a box cutter and started whittling the branch. Enzo watched Hibari's weird crafting session with heavy skepticism. Seeing his bro aggressively whittling, Enzo asked what the hell he was doing. Hibari said it was better than showing up empty-handed. He flashed a cocky grin, calling the sharpened stick his secret weapon. They stepped into the school hallway, the walls tagged with weird graffiti. Hibari recognized a brutal reality. Both of their ninja identities were fully compromised. He strictly warned Enzo to watch out for anyone trying to get close from now on. An instant later, a mob of schoolgirls swarmed them, screaming Hibari's name and begging to shoot TikToks with the famous kid. One girl ran up, hyping Hibari for sending Kumazawa straight to the ER. Enzo freaked out, not understanding how the news spread that fast. Right then, Ms. Micken showed up looking disappointed, ordering Hibari to the disciplinary office after school. Even the teachers knew. Enzo sensed something incredibly wrong was going down. He recalled the fight with Kumazawa. It was just the two of them and his loyal goons. Unreal. News of the brawl leaked everywhere. The mob of students suffocated Enzo. He had no idea who to guard against. Things were going from bad to worse, as they accidentally became the center of attention. Hibari visualized every student around them as an enemy holding a poison frog. He was dead certain they had been watched for a long time. The enemy witnessed the entire Kumazawa fight through their elite spy network. A frog was still hiding in the shadows, tracking Hibari's every move. Hibari lowered his head, calculating his next play to escape this mess. He realized the poison user was the one spreading these malicious rumors. Even if they ran, the students would just chase them. The heavy footsteps of the nosy mob grew louder. A group of students charged at Hibari, phones out and ready. Instead of dodging, Hibari opted for a wild move. He pulled out a coin and took his stance. With monstrous force, Hibari flicked the coin like a literal bullet. The coin tore down the hallway, smashing straight into the glass window at breakneck speed. A deafening crash echoed as the massive window shattered into a million tiny pieces. The sudden explosion terrified Enzo and the students. A girl let out a scream. Amidst the wreckage, Hibari calmly told everyone to watch their step, then walked away with Enzo. Enzo froze, realizing Hibari intentionally used coins to shatter the glass. He started piecing together the real strategy behind his bro's destructive stunt. The broken glass covering the floor acted as makeshift caltrops, blocking the nosy mob from advancing. Ms. Micken angrily ordered the students back to their classrooms to break up the chaos in the hall. Ms. Micken looked stressed, saying she had to call the janitor to clean up this mess right now. A girl nearby waved goodbye to Hibari. Enzo thought to himself that even though they bought some time, it was just a temporary fix. Hibari still looked deep in thought. Hibari flashed a cryptic smirk, his eyes glowing with confidence like he just figured out something massive. He declared he knew exactly who the hiding, poison user was, leaving Enzo shocked and highly suspicious. The two stared at the glass-covered hallway. Hibari swore he wouldn't stay on the defensive. It was time for the counterattack. Hibari's destination was the disciplinary office, where Ms. Micken was patiently waiting. Inside, Ms. Micken casually prepped tea, the evening sun glowing through the window, painting a peaceful scene. She carefully poured hot water into the cup, white steam rising in the quiet office. Checking her watch, Ms. Micken scolded Hibari for being late. She even excitedly bragged about buying some sweets for them to share. Strawberry shortcake and pudding sat on the desk, looking incredibly tempting. Hibari walked in with a blunt greeting. Hibari's face was dead serious and icy cold, not looking like a student here to apologize at all. Ms. Micken quickly regained her chill vibe and asked for his reflection essay, but Hibari brutally cut her off. He stared dead into her eyes and called her by her real title, Poison User. A flash of shock hit Ms. Micken's eyes. Hibari asked if she thought he noticed anything. He started breaking down the hallway incident. When the glass shattered, the hall plunged into absolute chaos, kids running for their lives. Hibari explained that while everyone was distracted by the flying glass, from a blind spot, a hand quietly launched a sneak attack without a single person noticing. He confessed he attacked everyone present during that split second of panic. Using the tiny wooden needles he whittled earlier, Hibari fired them into the crowd as a test. It was a harmless strike with 0 damage, but the perfect bait to flush out the enemy. In that panicking mob, only one single person dodged that surprise attack with flawless precision. Hibari's glare bore into Ms. Micken. He stated as a hard fact, "You were the only one who dodged on reflex." He elaborated that needles are the most basic projectiles any real ninja must master. Hibari asked if she was paranoid about poison coating the tip. A normal teacher would never have reflexes that fast. Faced with Hibari's ironclad logic, Ms. Micken's mask began cracking. She shivered. The gentle teacher's face warped into a psychotic grin, her eyes rolling back in pure malice. She admitted her cover was blown. The serial killer behind the recent murders, the poison user, finally stepped into the light. Shockingly, it was Ms. Micken, her face twisting in sick excitement at being exposed. Hibari gripped his pen like a dagger, declaring he would execute her right here. Ms. Micken started stripping off her lab coat, casually saying she had no reason to stick around in this meat suit anymore. Hibari narrowed his eyes, not letting his guard down for a second as his enemy transformed. She laughed maniacally, exposing 2 massive scorpion tattoos on her chest as her body began glowing. It was a shinobi seal, the key to pulling off high-level ninja arts. Hibari guarded his face and took his stance, but Micken's body was already mutating, twisting grotesquely. Her skeleton shifted, bulging muscles replacing her frail frame. Her flesh screamed as the transformation jutsu hit its peak. Her legs stretched out, replaced by a skin-tight assassin suit. Hibari froze, realizing this wasn't a basic disguise, but a tech that altered core body structure. The enemy standing there was a completely different person with blazing orange hair and insane height. Hibari knew instantly he was facing a hardcore veteran ninja. A white mask with 4 demonic eye slits. The assassin calling herself Manga exhaled, showing off a muscular yet freakishly feminine build. Hibari was stunned by her flawless shape-shifting ability to blend into any environment. Magai sneered, admitting Hibari had sharp eyes to see through her shell. She started cracking her joints, making sickening snaps like a reptile. Magai's body contorted unnaturally, gearing up for a blitz attack. She launched forward at a terrifying speed, ripping through the air. Hibari instantly powered up, blue streaks glowing on his neck as he channeled max output. Hibari launched a jab with his pen, but Magai effortlessly dodged it. Her fluid movements and speed caught Hibari off guard. Magai laughed sadistically, her blood-red eyes shining with pure bloodlust. She threw a massive sweeping strike, forcing Hibari to vault into the air. Magai kept the pressure on with heavy, unpredictable combos. Hibari kept a death grip on his pen, his eyes laser-focused. Magai closed the gap, flashing that horrific grin right in Hibari's face again. Hibari flinched, sensing something horribly wrong with her attack pattern. A syringe packed with emerald green poison slid out of Magai's sleeve. She aggressively thrust the needle at Hibari with both hands, forcing him into a desperate defense. Even worse, a tiny frog popped out of Magai's mouth, whipping out a long, whip-like red tongue. Hibari flipped backwards midair to escape the brutal pincer attack. He calculated her style was freakish and lawless. Even a scratch meant death by poison. Magai kept stalking him with the syringe, refusing to give Hibari a single inch to breathe. She clicked her tongue in annoyance, seeing Hibari actually dodge the surprise attack from her mouth frog. Magai froze as she watched her precious poison syringes shatter into pieces. Hibari stood there bathing in his blue aura, casually statting he saw her holding something way too dangerous. In that split-second clash, Hibari used his pen tip to slice a perfect line across the syringe. The vial shattered, the poison spraying everywhere, completely trashing Magai's toxic plot. Magai stared at the spilled premium poison, whining that Hibari's move was such a waste. She asked if he knew how insanely hard it was to refine that toxin once it was loaded. Magai stressed it wasn't medicine. A single drop was enough to flatline a civilian instantly. She had burned through countless test subjects to craft the ultimate poison, the perfect tool to break a human. Magai's eyes burned red with rage, as her life's work was obliterated by Hibari in a flash. Hibari demanded to know how many people she murdered for these psycho experiments. 178 people. That was Magai's cold answer, with 14 in this city alone. Visions of victims melting away flashed by, proving the assassin's sheer cruelty. She casually bragged that she memorized every single life she ended. The killing intent around Hibari grew thicker and more terrifying than ever at her sheer inhumanity. He charged at max speed, dead set on ending the fight right now. But Magai suddenly dropped a name that made Hibari slam the brakes: Amami Yui. Hibari's pen tip stopped millimeters from Magai's throat. She sneered, asking if Hibari wanted to know how his friend was doing. Magai challenged Hibari, holding the ultimate trump card. Hibari's face hardened. He realized he walked right into the cunning assassin's trap. Cut to a normal apartment complex in the late afternoon. Inside the room, Amami Yui was getting ready for a solo home workout. She booted up her phone, happily scrolling through yoga and Pilates tutorials. Yui started doing comfortable stretches, completely blind to the danger hunting her. Back to the fight, Hibari fought to suppress his rage hearing the enemy's threats. Magai admitted Yui was her hostage, and she could pull the trigger at any second. On the ceiling of Yui's room, a swarm of poisoned toads clung tight, tracking her every move. Yui kept working out carelessly, unaware the Grim Reaper was hanging right over her head. Magai swore that with one tiny signal, the frogs would execute Yui with pinpoint accuracy. Hibari lowered his head in silence, knowing one wrong move meant a tragic end for Yui. Magai smugly asked if Hibari felt the rage burning now that he was backed into a corner. She ordered Hibari to stand down and not take a single step. The threat to murder Yui dripped with ice from the psycho killer's mouth. Magai's face looked demonic as she soaked in the high of holding someone's life in her hands. The poisoned toads above Yui flicked their tongues, their lethal venom locked and loaded. Hibari held his stance, his eyes turning colder than ever. Poison dripped from a frog's mouth onto the floor, hissing with toxic white smoke. Magai laughed, asking if Hibari was blown away by her flawless prep work. She explained she used ninjutsu to max out the toad's camo, waiting patiently for this exact moment. Their perfect stealth was the secret weapon Manga used to dominate her prey. Manga announced she was launching an all-out assault on Hibari from every angle. She dropped her terms. Hibari had to stand still and let her kill him if he wanted to buy Yui's life. Hibari cracked a smirk, nodding that hiding behind hostages was a classic dirty ninja trick. Maga's eyes shined with malice, convinced she had the win in the bag. Hibari looked up, daring his opponent to take her shot if she actually could. Hibari's insane, borderline crazy confidence left Manga stunned, her eyes bugging out in disbelief. Manga was rattled by his reckless attitude, while the blue aura from him still radiated crushing pressure. She gritted her teeth, pure fury erupting as she felt disrespected by a weaker opponent. Manga roared like a maniac, assuming Hibari was just bluffing, and instantly summoned the poisoned toads. With a murderous point of her finger, she ordered the freaks to shred Hibari's body and end his life right now. Maga's face warped with hysteria. She screamed that she wanted to see his organs ripped apart and for him to die in max agony. A barrage of crimson toad tongues shot forward like razor-sharp spears, but his azure eyes faced the Grim Reaper without a shred of pain.